The Square Ball Podcast.
Well, welcome to the show. This is the West Stand, our guest-led show here on the Square Ball. Dan here with Michael. We've got a remote guest today. That's exciting.
It is. We need to look at a screen and not just your face.
Do you know what's also very exciting? The fact that it turns out NordVPN are still on board for the summer, as we've discovered in the last week or so.
Just goes to show what a good job we've done.
And I don't think they're listening to the more recent reads, which is probably for the best. Sort of checked in at the start when they were really professional and smooth and stuff. Not that our standards ever diminish, of course, we know from...
The message remains.
Yeah. And the message is?
10 devices.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
You can be secure on public Wi-Fi. I know that one.
Access geo-blocked content.
Correct.
From streaming services around the world.
Is that it? No, we've got a good offer.
30-day money-back guarantee, additional months on top of the months that you've got with your 2-year plan. I think that's it, isn't it?
That's it.
Smooth as ever. Yeah. Watch and learn, baby. NordVPN.com/TSB. Links in the episode description as well. We welcome our guest today then, Ali Maxwell from Not the Top 20. Our farewell. We're never going to speak to you again show, Ali.
It's bittersweet, isn't it? It's bittersweet. And yeah, a remote guest with nothing remotely interesting to say was what I thought when you said that. But really nice to catch up with you guys again and just sort of stand on the shore as the ship sails off into the distance. And I'll be waving and you guys will be cracking open the beer straight away and getting back on it because it seems like it's been a hell of a party for the last few months.
See you in 12 months. No, I don't think we'd be so arrogant as to presume that we're not going to be in for an almighty struggle next season. But truthfully, we're still not thinking about that, are we? I don't think.
Not yet. Those anxieties are to come in, start of August when we're still going, we still need a striker, still need a centre-back, a goalkeeper.
We need 6 more
number
players.
10, still need a left-back.
Spend another 100 million, you pigs. But as it is at the minute, I think we are still enjoying the feeling. Although it's ebbing away now and life is returning to normal, I think there's still a nice feeling around this. And it was, again, nice to watch the playoff semi-final second leg last night without a dog in the fight. And as much as, Chris Wilder became a bit of a pantomime villain for us, didn't he, across the course of the season? Actually, you kind of watched it and you go, yeah, fine, 6-0, whatever, Good luck at Wembley, lads.
Wasn't full, was it?
Yeah.
No.
Poor dude. But anyway, I've come to accept Chris Wilder. If it comes to Wilder or Lampard, I'm Wilder all the way. Yeah,
100%. But
last time we spoke, one of the topics of conversation was the lack of jeopardy that you guys were feeling watching Leeds games. The team were in incredible form at that time, and particularly at home, there were games where you weren't even facing a shot. So I think, although it might be a bit of a roundabout way of looking at this, that the jeopardy that was created by Sheffield United and Burnley both being good for 38 games was probably the reason why the end of the season was a bit more fun and exciting for you guys, because it felt like a bit more of an achievement than it otherwise would if it was just you and Burnley trotting to the title, which might have been sewn up in another time from January onwards. So, thank you, Chris Wilder and Sheffield United, for creating some jeopardy, which then helps make it feel even better when you fall away.
We can lean over and we can rub him on the head and I can rub his hair, ruffle his hair. Well done, Chris. But I think the jeopardy sort of crept, didn't it? It was a slow creep of jeopardy, and then it arrived all at once at the end because it went right to the end, and it went to the very last kick to all intents and purposes of the last game of the season. I mean, what a way to win it. But you had us down for the title from the start, so hats tip to you lads, because your pre-season predictions, we spoke around those, didn't we? And you said you tipped us for the number one spot. Did it turn out quite as you expected, or were you expecting or predicting nothing more than a top place finish for Leeds?
I just want to say we did also predict we would win the league at the start of the season. It wasn't exactly a consistent message necessarily through the season. I think there were bits where we had wobbles.
Ebbs and flows, Michael.
Yeah. But we did say that as well at the start, because it's easy to look at a squad at the start of the season and go, yeah, that'll do it. But then, when you've thrown him in at the last minute against Swansea, some difficult moments.
I think as you'll know that George, who's been on a couple of times this season, was probably even stronger than I was. We were unanimous that we had Leeds as our pick for the title pre-season, but I'm a bit worried about what George is going to do without you guys, to be honest, without Leeds United, because it's been something that he's really stuck to his guns with. He came into quite a lot of stick from other fans, because as you guys know, other fans don't want Leeds United to win the title, and we're looking for chinks in the armour throughout and looking for reasons to say, no, actually, they're not very good. Probably had to talk you guys down from a few ledges at times as well. And, we came to see these appearances as kind of therapy sessions to a certain extent. So I hope you've got someone lined up, some Premier League expert, does that even exist, to do the same next year. But no, look, to be honest, and I don't want to come across smug or pat ourselves on the back too much. From a Leeds point of view, what we thought would happen, by which I mean how good we thought the team would be, was completely justified every single time I watched the team this season, and looks even more so when you look at a points tally of 100 points, a goal difference of plus 65, and yes, to add the nerdy layer, probably the best underlying numbers, expected goals ratio that I think we've seen. I think only Fulham under Marco Silva run you guys close. And actually, I think Fulham and Marco Silva are something to maybe discuss on the show, because I think the team most reminiscent of Leeds in terms of championship promoter teams I can think of in the last 5 or 6 years, and a team who in the Premier League obviously have kicked on and done very well. So possibly a team to look at and emulate, and a kind of reference point more so than some of the recent sides. But yeah, look, feeling pretty good about it. You guys got 100 points, and every time I watched you looked clearly the dominant side. And the only thing that created the jeopardy really was that we didn't think Burnley would be quite as good. We didn't think Burnley would get 100 points. So it's not a surprise to us that Leeds won the title and got 100 points. And therefore the biggest surprise, and fair play to them for many reasons, that Burnley got 100 points and sorted out a lot of turnover last summer, built a team from the back, which might have been boring, might have looked really tough to watch in the first half of the season. But you have to say Parker did construct a very impressive promotion campaign. But you guys were the better side, and there's many, many ways you can measure that. And even if you ended up level on points, I think we're pretty, the strength of our conviction was very rarely wavered and ended up looking decent after 46 games eventually.
Yeah, I think we were in line with like the XG, weren't we? Both scoring and conceding, whereas Burnley outperformed theirs, particularly when it came to conceding. They conceded about half the number of goals they should have according to the chances that they faced. So I totally hear you, and we're doing a Jesse Marsh underlying metrics thing here. However, just on the Jeopardy stuff, just revisiting that, because that is something that confused me a little bit earlier in the season. I have since gone back and watched, there's a video doing the rounds on the club YouTube of all the goals, and you see just how good this side has been. Now the pressure's been stripped out, all the Jeopardy's gone, seeing just how good they are. And going back and looking at some of those 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 home wins that we had earlier in the season, where you kind of, we didn't even have to break sweat to win a lot of those games. It wasn't like Leeds at our swashbuckling best, as you saw towards the end of the season. I think that was just a bit confusing. We're not used to seeing a side so dominant versus the opposition, I felt. And that was a little bit jarring at times.
Yeah, I would say so. Certainly the games like Plymouth at home, for example, one that stood out, where a team came to defend and then we went 3-0 up fairly quickly and they just stayed defending. And it was strange. So you just don't expect it, do you, in a game? Because you would say there's no point in just trying to hold on to a 3-0 defeat. But we've seen that a fair bit this year, of teams almost meekly accepting that losing by a goal or two isn't actually that bad, and so willing to do it. Teams time wasting when they're a goal down, and you think just to try and break up the patterns of play and stuff. And it's been hard to watch in some ways. But yeah, I was the same watching those goals back, thinking, you know what, it's been all right actually. For as painful as it was for certain bits of it, some great moments.
Yeah,
I think also managed to achieve, and it's notable for me, kind of thinking tactically and thinking about other teams that have racked up big points tallies, and specifically maybe thinking of Leicester and Southampton last season, is that like the top level of the game now, or being a dominant team, is generally about like dominating the territory and the possession. Birmingham in League One this season are a good example. But it's not something that turns fans on particularly, and it's not always particularly exciting to watch. I think what Leeds managed to achieve this year, which I was really impressed with, is being able to dominate the ball and dominate territory, but at times it's basically the 2 centre-backs and the 2 defensive midfielders in build-up and then 6 attackers. Whereas if you think of Southampton and Leicester last season, both of them would have like probably 3 in the back line and 2 in midfield, and then 1 less attacking player. So just the speed with which Leeds have played, didn't, very rarely had to spend ages like building it up really slowly and just dominating the ball for the sake of it, which can be a bit like pulling teeth at times, or, watching it can feel like that. Always impressed with like the intensity on show and the speed of the ball movement and the crispness of the passing, getting it into forward areas, and then, ideas from there of how best to create chances. I think you often see teams who spend ages dominating the ball, getting to the final third, and then it's almost like the start of a new attack, and they don't necessarily have particularly strong ideas of how to actually create chances. Maybe they rely on 1v1 ability, and, Leeds obviously had plenty of that. But I think just the way that the team played in attack, I found it really exciting to watch as well.
And we've probably evolved, I think, or we feel we've spoken about over the course of the 2 seasons, where the attacking play became perhaps more aggressive, more purposeful in the second season after we tweaked the midfield. And I know that you guys, you liked in particular, Joe Rothwell was one that was singled out for attention. He's been in a quiet way one of the stars of the season, I think, Joe Rothwell, for picking it up and just making people panic as he runs at them. And not to mention, obviously, Tanaka, who was just outstanding.
Yes, I thought maybe I'm misremembering, but there were definitely times towards the end of the season where I wanted to see more of Rothwell. I remember watching Leeds games, and in particular, if you needed to score, I often felt that having Gruev in there with a Tanaka, for example, rather than a Rothwell, I was always like, come on, Daniel, let's get Rothwell on. Let's get a bit more thrust and a bit more penetration through the middle. But it's very clear, and there have been players like this throughout history, haven't there? Like, it's very clear that Gruev is a sort of player that, and I don't necessarily see it as much, like the manager just loves for what he does. Maybe it's the calmness, the composure, the control. Like, for me, I'm the type of guy that's like, right, should we just get Rothwell on because he can dribble and that's a bit more fun. But, clearly Gruev is someone that Farke has always loved. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you say you've appreciated Rothwell, because I remember saying that at the start of the season. And actually, I've thought a few times this season, like, I still kind of want to see a bit more of him here. But you need players.
He did have an injury towards the end of the season as well, which sidelined him a little bit. And the other thing I was just going to say was, I don't think we won. Did we win an away game? I don't know about the final stretch, but did we win an away game without either Gruev or Ampadu in midfield? I don't think we did.
He definitely flipped back to Gruev towards the end because Pascal Struijk was injured, so that meant Ampadu dropped back, didn't it? Which then meant Gruev came back into the team full time, pretty much at that stage.
Yeah, the extra anchor in midfield, I think, sort of he just stabilised the midfield and gave it more structure in away games where you face a slightly different proposition to home games.
Yeah, but then Rothwell played a huge part in coming off the bench in set pieces and things. Like, in the crucial games against Sunderland and Sheffield United, that little pinch point of the season, it's Rothwell putting the ball in, Struijk with the headers, and it kind of that it felt like we'd almost won it at that point, didn't it? I think coming out of those games.
That was February.
I know. I felt like we lost it a bit after that, but after coming out of those, I was like, I think this is probably done now. Did
I say that I felt like emotionally the Sunderland win would be looked back on as the Pablo moment, like when he scored at Swansea in 2020, and it was probably a little bit early in the calendar, but I think that was the decisive moment, if there was a decisive moment, when you went, hang on a second. But then we did wobble afterwards, you're right. So so what do I know?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly how concerned I was getting during that wobble. I think I remember, I think after the Luton game, just thinking to myself, wait, oh yeah, last season, this same team with the same manager playing a similar way also won, one or two of your last 8 games of the season. And it wasn't like there was nothing riding on the games as well. So suddenly you were 1 win in 6, weren't you, after that Luton game?
Yeah.
You'd been struggling to win away from home in particular, and you'd drawn 2 of your last 3 at home, which was normally where you'd bank on 3 points. So if there was any wobble, and it took, it takes me a while to wobble because I'm not as emotionally invested. But I think at that point, once Darlow had come in for Meslier, that was the last remaining thing. Was like, is there just some issue psychologically here? That's normally where your mind turns to, isn't it? When you can't always put your finger on it. So you go, well, there's obviously a mental weakness. And sometimes those aren't as definitive or as significant as you think in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, I think that was the instrumental change. I think that flipped things from a psychological point of view. And that's not to heap all the blame by any stretch of the imagination on Illan Meslier, but it just took away that conversation, I think, which is why I was imploring him to do it
And I think for Joe Rodon's mental health as well.
Yeah,
because he was very much at the end of his tether with Meslier, wasn't he?
You could see it.
You could see the absolute disdain on his face sometimes when stuff would happen. Whereas you saw in the early days, Darlow would come in and catch crosses, and you see Rodon going across and like shaking him like he'd saved a penalty. It was just like, yes, that's what you can do. You can just hold on to the ball and it's fine. That's what goalkeepers do.
Yeah.
So I think it moved everyone on, didn't it? I think. Yeah. And we've both felt a bit of guilt, haven't we, with Meslier towards the end of the season? Because not so much in the title celebrations, but with the promotion ones, he seemed to be a little bit set back from them, didn't he? He didn't seem like he was maybe quite comfortable being there, which, I don't know. It's harsh, maybe, because he's played a lot of games.
I think that's a pretty understandable from his point of view, and probably the right call again from his point of view. Because imagine if he'd been like front and center, lifting the trophy next after the captain and giving it big guns. I think by the same token, you'd have probably gone like, Ilan, do you remember what happened? So, I think he's probably made the right decision, even if, as you say, it is a bit sad.
Whereas Harry Gray saw no problem in putting himself to the front of all these things, having played about 10 minutes all season.
Some boy, I know, absolutely brilliant. He loved it, didn't he? But it's funny though. But if we hold on against Swansea, and suddenly it's not 1 win in 6, it's 2 wins in 3 because we'd have beaten Millwall, drawn at QPR, and it flips the complexion on it. So it does go to show that it's fine. It is fine margins in football, isn't it? Well, as we saw by the end result, winning it on goal difference. I feel that if I have one slight regret, and I'm just being completely greedy, it's that I would have liked us to have toppled the points record, because I think we could have done under very slightly different circumstances if the keeper change had been made earlier. We've spotted enough games where and I don't know, it's always coulda, woulda, shoulda, isn't it? With dropped points, but I think it was there for the taking with this team. It's a shame, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, and I think it just shows how much has to go right in order to achieve that points tally, to be honest. I know Birmingham have got 111 in League One, but in championship terms, and clearly it's a more competitive division overall and harder to dominate like that. But it just shows, doesn't it? You guys, by most measures other than goals scored, dominated pretty much every single league game you played this season. Even if you take into account the results, you won the majority of your games this season, and you did so, looking very, very strong. But it just shows that even with that, you still need a striker to be in unbelievable form, probably, and/or a goalkeeper that's net positive rather than a net negative.
I tell you, I was going to say it's a reflection on how much we've enjoyed doing these shows with you this year. That when we beat Oxford on Good Friday, I was obviously desperate for us to beat Oxford. But I felt guilty because of George. I was like, I almost felt like I want to apologise to him. But
that's very sweet.
They were fine in the end.
Yeah. But I mean, what about that? Flipping forward to Easter Monday, just completely unexpected. To turn up and do Stoke by 6 was just unprecedented, wasn't it? It's the most fun I think I've had inside a football stadium.
Until maybe the week after was pretty good as well.
In a long while. Yeah, up to that point, I was going to say. Yeah, it was just amazing. And I think that 6-0, I think we knew by half time we'd done it. And then, the mind started turning on to what's going to happen between Burnley and Sheffield United. But I think at that point, we just felt bulletproof. After you win 6-0, you're going to do, aren't you? Did you think it was ever going to turn out any different that Easter Monday?
No, not particularly. There must have been a number of games in the season where you probably had the same amount of shots in the first 20 minutes and scored no goals. And it was a case of, blocked shots or hit the post or put it wide, missed chances, whatever. And in that case, Pirot it just clicks for him in front of goal. And can you imagine trying to play against that team at that point if you're Stoke, and frankly extending it to Bristol City? Watching that game was absolutely. I honestly thought, that was a 45th match of a long season covering 72 teams, and clearly a disproportionate amount of Leeds chat probably because of the drama of it all and our predictions and that sort of thing. But yeah, watching that game against Bristol City, where they had every reason to give it a pretty good go and have been an awkward opponent for most top teams this season, I was just struck by how aggressive the team were. As soon as Leeds lost the ball, Bogle or Firpo is snapping at heels if the ball's out wide in midfield. The midfielders, the Aronson guys like that, the work rate of the wide players, and then, as I mentioned already, just the speed of how the team attack and move the ball so quickly. It's kind of like watching a slower possession team on fast forward, and it was just really exciting from a neutral's point of view. So very, very impressed with how the team stepped up in those moments.
Before I segue into the next question, Ali, do you want to give a quick plug to your event that you've got coming up as well in Yorkshire?
Yes. Yeah. NTT20 live in Yorkshire, specifically in Sheffield.
Right.
So I'm hoping you guys will say, the public transport system's great up there, and getting from Leeds to Sheffield is super easy and takes no time at all. And so, for anyone listening who lives in and around Leeds, just 20 minutes probably to Sheffield to come and see the lads. It's probably not that.
Yeah, no, we don't have public transport like that in the north, sadly.
You can get to Sheffield fairly easily.
You can get to Sheffield fairly easily, but I mean, from an emotional point of view, anything south of about Wakefield, dead to us here in Yorkshire. So sadly, we can't help. I'm afraid. No, when is that then? When's the live event?
It's on Saturday, the 5th of July, 3:00 kickoff on a Saturday. It's part of a wider podcast festival called Crossed Wires, which is got a few other sports bits and bobs. Any cricket fans, Tailenders are playing the next day, which is a popular cricket pod. Loads of other stuff as well. We've got the 3 p.m. Saturday slot, which we're buzzing about because we think 3 p.m. Saturday is an iconic time. And it also allows us to really kick on in Sheffield afterwards. One of the guys that we work with, Sam, is a Sheffield born and bred. So he's drawing up a list of pubs. We want everyone that's coming to see us to crack on and stay with us and enjoy what we hope will be a sunny afternoon on the beers and evening, and who knows what else. But yeah, I mean, the show itself is going to be, it's very easy to get bogged down in the week to week and in the major stuff around promotions and relegations. And we do that, but we always keep a list during the whole season of the maddest stuff that's happening across these 3 leagues every week, the weird decisions that get made, the bonkers stuff that clubs decide to do, players, managers saying or doing insane stuff. And I think we just want to get people together who appreciate how much more fun the EFL is than top level football, and basically get everyone in a room, tell some of the best stories, remind people of what they've missed or what they never found out in the first place, have a laugh. In doing so, we will be able to zoom in on a couple of clubs and kind of have some meatier conversations as well. But it's not just going to be me and George sitting on stage droning on to each other about XG. That's important to say. When we do a live show, we want to make sure it's a show. It's an event. It's not just a rehashed podcast sitting up on stage. So hopefully really good fun for everyone to join, and we want to make a day of it. So if anyone can get to Sheffield on Saturday, the 5th of July, we would absolutely love to see it. And tickets, Crossed Wires Festival. If you just go on the site there, you should be able to find it pretty straightforward.
Saturday 3 p.m. though, you may have to watch it on the Fire Stick on the international feed if you can't make that. Hey, Sheffield is actually the next topic of conversation I was going to ask you about, and Chris Wilder and the fall off that happened there. I mean, we saw them. Are they maybe, do you think, in the playoffs reverting back to the mean now and showing their quality and superiority against someone like Bristol City, who I have to admit I was a little bit surprised at that fixture of the distance between us and them on that day. I expected them to put up more of a fight, but they've kind of reverted to type as well. I think they've leveled back out again in the playoffs against Sheffield United, who just looks superior. But their drop off caught us by surprise, didn't it? Completely.
Oh yeah, I did expect one of the two of them to a bit, but when I was putting in. We did a lot of spreadsheets to try and cope with it all. I don't think I had anyone finishing below 92 points, 93 points on there. So the extent to which they dropped off and the speed with it, which they did it, because it was it 4 defeats in 5 they ended up with in a little spell. I didn't see it coming at all. I do think they will go up through the playoffs because I do think they are the 3rd best team in this division.
Yeah. So, they did get 92 points, as Chris Wilder would like to remind you.
Of course they did.
Ali.
They did. And good for him.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, I was surprised at the level of the drop off, but it wasn't a huge surprise in terms of they'd had so many games earlier in the season where, if you were to watch every weekend just Leeds' games, Burnley's games, and Sheffield United games, and no other games in the Championship, and become an expert on the promotion battle, I'm pretty confident that you'd have been feeling throughout, particularly once Burnley started to get the goals flowing a bit more. You'd have been feeling that Sheffield United just visually were the third best side of the three, and there'd been loads of games, quite a lot at home as well, not just on their travels, where it'd been very tough to watch, and maybe they'd nicked it in the second half, and they showed good character, good personality, all that stuff that you think is, forms the basis of a promotion campaign, which it does, of course, but actually you need the performance as the key foundation. And they didn't necessarily have that to the same extent as Leeds and Burnley. 92 points is a hell of a points return though. And, I find myself boring myself when I come on here and I speak to guys like you. And whenever I speak to club specific shows or fans, it's like, obviously my point of view is so different, having to always be across all of the teams, and therefore I think having a really good bird's eye view of a division. But what it means in terms of how I see football compared to a fan is that I'm so clear on how important the context of all the teams around you are to how you're feeling about your team and whether they're doing well enough or not. And very clearly to me, that was the case with Leeds and Burnley and Sheffield United, where, as I said at the top of the show, you guys were always really good. And it's only because they dropped off that it ended up feeling wonderful and happy. If they'd have stuck around, you could have finished third. It sounds insane to say, but you could have finished third on 99 or 100 points. But that's important. And I think that's important heading up to the Premier League as well, where when teams go up to the Prem, the obvious conversations to have, and of course they're important ones to have and they're right to have, is what should they do? Who should they sign? What do they need to change? Should they change the manager? How much money have they got? Do you change the whole squad or just half the squad or just two or three? But frankly, whether Leeds stay up or not is going to be as linked to how bad or good the existing Premier League teams are. And that's the biggest challenge, is not just what Leeds do on the field and the amount of points that Leeds get. It's going to be, are there enough teams also struggling for Leeds to get above? Could Leeds be good enough that they don't need to worry about this at all? Possibly, maybe. Obviously, the current situation with 2 years in a row with all three coming back down doesn't feel great, but it's essentially, Wolves and West Ham are the worst teams in the Premier League, aren't they? Outside of the ones that getting relegated. Well, actually, Tottenham and Manchester United are currently the worst teams in the Premier League. And that sums it up. It's funny to laugh at Spurs and Manchester United, and don't get me wrong, I'm doing that. But that, if anything sums it up well enough, is that those are the two teams above the relegation zone right now. That's absolutely insane. That's the size of the challenge. And, it doesn't mean don't bother. It doesn't mean don't try and improve the team. Don't try and be the best version of yourselves. But it does mean, if Leeds go back down, and it's the same with any team, you'll just go, oh, they didn't get the transfers right. They didn't bring in the right players. They should have changed the manager, or they shouldn't have sacked the manager, or they should have appointed a different manager when they did sack the manager. It's not always quite as simple as that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've actually led us perfectly towards the next question I was going to ask, which is about the state of I suppose it's the gap between the two divisions and what it means for the EFL. Because it feels like the whole thing, the stratification of the different tiers in football is getting even more pronounced with every passing year, because I know obviously the EFL is distorted hugely. The Championship is distorted hugely by parachute payments, but you've also got the clubs that go up unable to bridge the gap because of the PSR limits. So they can't spend enough to turn the squads over quick enough to stay up. So suddenly you're entering this weird nether region world where there's sort of almost a new division popping up between the two. And Burnley have inhabited that space perfectly over the last few years. The hope from our point of view is that hopefully we don't, but I think we're very aware it's a clear and present danger of just being in this position.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's one that it doesn't really serve me to say that it's a problem, because we want to be covering leagues that, we always say are really unpredictable and, a lot more balanced than the Premier League. And that's a big kind of calling card, I'd say, for the EFL, and why we find covering the leagues more interesting than covering the very top of the game, which up until this year, I've always thought was pretty boring and not very, fairly predictable. And now we can't say the same about the top of the Championship for the reasons that you've alluded to. If three teams go up, and the three teams that if the three teams that came down go back up, Sheffield United win at Wembley, the three teams that went up come down. Like, that is a big problem for competitive balance. And you know, the very many reasons that go into it are, you know, I think it does lead back to money and the way that money is split. The answers or the solutions, I think, are pretty difficult to work out, and I worry that we're too far down the line at this point. I'm generally an optimistic guy, and I generally think that there are ways in which, you know, the mold could be broken. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen every year until the end of time, but, you know, increasingly, as you can tell, I'm getting a bit more worried about it, because it's not great for the game, is it?
I did expect the three that went up to come down, but I didn't expect them to struggle to get. Are they even going to get to 60 points between them? Something like that? They're absolute. It's been the most dismal effort from all three of them, hasn't it? I know Ipswich, maybe you could say, have at times looked like they've had a bit of something about them, but it's been quite demoralising in some ways. Funny as well, particularly in the case of Southampton, because they beat us in the playoff final. We can't pretend we haven't been a little bit pleased to see them suffer after they gave us such a miserable day out in May. But at the same time, there's a bit of you going, oh, God,
yeah,
is this what's in store?
56 points between them with obviously 2 games left.
Having got like nearly 300 between them the year before. It's a strange drop-off.
Yeah, isn't it just? But, I mean, that is the problem for next season, and it'll be interesting to see if we can leverage whatever it is that is good about Leeds. There must be something
Loads of things
to get a foothold in there. I don't know. It's all built on dreams at the minute.
I mean, the owners have made clear that they are going to be at the limits of PSR spending and things, haven't they? They have said that, whereas you did get the impression Leicester going up were already above and beyond some PSR limits, most likely. Just as a complete aside, actually, what do you think will happen to Leicester next year?
I've been trying to work out in terms of a debate or arguments with the EFL, with the Premier League, with potential points deductions, and I haven't really got a clear answer on that at the moment. I don't think it's a great situation. So, you know, I guess from a different angle for some of the existing clubs in the Championship, that might give them more of an opportunity if there's a team coming down that's in some distress. But yeah, it's pretty shit, to be honest, to just be constantly having to work out like who's going to have financial issues, who's going to be fine, who's spending too much money is then going to get punished for it, who can't compete because their owners just cannot fund losses compared to all the other owners in the league. It's not great, but you've got to try and work it out. So we've got a fair snapshot ahead of next season.
Yeah, from your point of view, I suppose you've got some interest coming in from the south entrance via the form of Wrexham and Birmingham, Birmingham have obviously flexed their financial muscle. It's different rules financially in the Championship compared to League One, so it won't be as easy for them to distort things. I think they almost distorted the market to a certain extent with their investment down there, didn't they? But it'd be harder to do that. And again, similarly with Wrexham, There's no way, despite I suppose the publicity that comes with their ownership, that's any match for parachute payments. So there'll be certainly some very interesting things for you to get your teeth into next season. Sadly, we're not going to be part of it.
Definitely. No, yeah. Thank you. I can tell that you are trying to suggest to the Square Ball faithful that sticking around with not the top 20 and just maybe as a nice little antidote, a little something different from the week-to-week Premier League grind, just to keep your eye in on some very unpredictable and exciting leagues, right? That's what I should be saying.
That's what it's all about.
But no, yeah, that is going to be interesting because, as you say, will they be able to compete with parachute payment clubs? No, but their revenues are both well above a lot of the Championship already. And so, as discussed, if there's only 3 clubs with parachute payments, then it stands to reason that the other 21, you know, if Birmingham and Wrexham can get it right, they are there to be shot at. I think they're obviously being coupled together. That makes sense. They're the 2 coming up automatically. And there's lots of reasons why you can kind of pull them together. But I think Wrexham come up with a squad that's won 3 straight promotions. And yes, they've had quite a lot of turnover, but they've done so by basically signing Jay Rodriguez, Stephen Fletcher, and a load of other kind of 33, 34-year-olds. And you have to think that squad and the way that they play under Phil Parkinson has to have a bit of a ceiling in the modern Championship. Whereas Birmingham used all their money to buy quite a lot of really good foreign talent, didn't go down the route of buying a load of like washed up former Championship players to get them out of League One, which is what Derby and Sunderland and other clubs have done when they went down. They're incredibly rich, and they've done it, but in quite a clever and creative way that means they should come up with a pretty serious squad for Championship level and the ability to add to it. So for me, I'm not making any predictions right now. I don't know what the whole picture is going to look like, but I think I'd expect Birmingham to be challenging for promotion, and I don't expect that for Wrexham. But I've been kind of questioning them for a couple of years, and they keep getting promoted. So who can say? And
for all we can talk about parachute payments, look at Luton. Yeah. It's not necessarily the only thing you need, is it? It's I was surprised by them, I have to say. At the start of the season, I'm pretty sure we were thinking, they'll be in the playoff mix. It'll be difficult games against them. Abysmal. Yeah, all season.
Didn't show anything, did they? Yeah, do you know what? I will say this. We'll sign off on this thought, Ali. It's actually, in retrospect, now you're taking all the stress out of it. It's been a really enjoyable season. I think we've had a really enjoyable time this season. Like, winning games feels really nice. Watching good football feels nice. Watching good attacking, winning football feels nice. And it ain't going to be the same next season. It could be not necessarily quite a culture shock if they do recruit the sort of more physical players that we expect them to do. So that there'll be a more battling side perhaps next season. So I think I think you need to enjoy the enjoyable bits. And now we've got to the end and we got up and we won the thing. I think we can say it was enjoyable, and we'll definitely file away. This season in particular in the EFL it's been a good one, I think.
What, getting 100 points and going up?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say it's been good.
Big call, I know. Big call, Ali.
I'm really genuinely pleased to hear that, not least because I like you guys and I think you're good people, but also more generally, like, having this snapshot of 72 clubs and therefore, taking the temperature of 72 fan bases, it does highlight the fact that football fans are kind of miserable most of the time, and like a really large proportion of them. Like, we've been joking about how in League Two, 3 of the 4 teams that go into the playoffs with a chance of promotion went into it being like, we're rubbish, the manager's a fraud, he's got to go, should we sack him before the playoffs to give us a better chance? You're just like, those are the guys at the top of the league. So I genuinely like to try and get people to feel better and remember that we should all be doing this to enjoy it to a certain extent. So well done. I'm glad you got there in the end. And I wish you all the best up in the Prem.
Is there any way we can encourage the football world to say Walsall is falling apart again instead?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not quite the same ring to it, but they've done more Leedsy thing than we've ever done this season.
Massively so. Yeah.
So pick on them.
It's their turn. Ali, thanks so much. Honestly, it's been a genuine pleasure. And we have to hope we don't speak soon. But I'm aware there's a chance we might.
Yeah.
So we shall see. So thanks for coming on. The best to you and George, and we will keep in touch.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And I've appreciated lots of lovely messages from Leeds fans over the course of the season. Each time I've been on the show, and got plenty of mates who support Leeds United, and so it's always nice when they go, but you know what, I don't listen to your podcast, but I heard you on the Square Ball, so that was nice. Good to know you well. So there you go.
Where are we going to finish next year? Make a completely stab in the dark prediction based on no transfers.
Yeah. You know what? I'd absolutely love to. I think you'll finish 17th.
Yes. Is
the right answer.
I have to believe in underlying numbers. If you're going to be a bit of a nerd, you have to believe in them. And if you see a team going up with the best XG ratio you've ever seen, you have to believe that might mean something, that team might just be able to compete better than some of the ones that have gone up. So that's what I'm sticking to right now.
One of the best XG ratios you've ever seen. You'll never sing that. Right. Ali, catch you soon, mate. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
The Square Ball Podcast.